Over 2 years on from the PlayStation 5's release, Sony's new DualSense Edge controller offers a premium upgrade over the regular DualSense supplied with the console. The DualSense Edge's aim is pretty clear. It's Sony's response to Microsoft's Xbox Elite controller, a competition-focused pro gamepad with back paddles, fully remappable buttons, adjustable triggers, and swappable parts. It offers the works, but yes, the Edge has a premium price tag to go along with those features, a not insignificant £210 or $200, at least at launch anyway. So here it is. On the surface, it's not too dissimilar to the regular DualSense model, but look a bit closer and it's got some seriously neat features under the hood designed to give players ways to customize each button, stick, and trigger. So, is this the ultimate controller for PS5, bearing in mind the vast third-party competition? And does it truly feature match the Xbox Elite controller? Let's find out. First things first, let's give the original DualSense its dues. This, the regular £60 or $70 controller when it arrived in 2020, got off to a flying start. Games like Astro's Playroom showcased it, and the PS5's features brilliantly. The adaptive triggers, the haptic feedback, speaker, gyrometer, accelerometer all worked in harmony to create a fresh platforming experience. I love it, still love it. There really isn't anything else quite like Astro's Playroom on PS5 in blending the hardware features with its software. Other examples like Returnal, Ratchet & Clank, Rift Apart also make great use of the DualSense's adaptive trigger resistance, adding these finer degrees of control over each new gun. But then, perhaps less inspired is its use in most other shooters like Call of Duty, where the trigger resistance only really gets in the way of the action. Honestly, for the most part, I ended up switching the feature off entirely for those games. Ergonomically speaking though, the DualSense is obviously superb, a great feeling controller of course, but features like the adaptive triggers distinguish it from the older DualShock 4. And yes, all of that is kept in place for the DualSense Edge as well. So what's the actual offer with the DualSense Edge? The price is steep, obviously, £210, $200 or €240. In most markets, that's around 3.5 times the price of a regular DualSense, so it really has to deliver. Let's start with what's in the box before we get into the benefits and the drawbacks. Inside, you get this hard white case carrying the controller itself, a long braided USB-C cable, and all the spare paddles and thumbsticks down there as well. There's even a little hatch at the back, letting you charge the controller while it's nestled inside the case, which is a pretty neat touch. And lastly, there's an extra plastic connector right at the front here, just in case you want to physically lock your USB cable into the controller. Just for peace of mind, I guess. As for the Edge controller itself, well, Sony doesn't change what already worked. The fit, the feel in the hands is near identical to what a regular DualSense is in terms of its dimensions. The handles, button placement, stick placement are just the same, down to the millimeter. Now, there are some subtle tweaks. In terms of its weight, the Edge comes in at 335 grams, which is a bit heavier next to a regular DualSense at 280 grams. Honestly, I didn't notice the difference or feel any more fatigued over hours of play. Elsewhere, we get this glossy black plastic for the lower half of the controller, while the trackpad and buttons are swapped out for a black color as well. Beyond that, well, this is where we start seeing the first of the new features, the major benefits and their corresponding drawbacks. So, advantage number one is the Edge's real party trick, replaceable analog stick modules. Now, I'm not talking about the analog stick tops here. You of course get 3 pairs of analog sticks to swap in and out freely direct from above. Each pair is different in style, 2 with a domed top, 1 shorter in height and 1 higher, and all of them are interchangeable to your liking. Just pull up firmly to remove like this, and push down to set the replacement in place again. But that's not the killer feature. Suppose you have the dreaded analog stick drift. What then? Well, Sony has you covered. By pulling this release slider at the back here, the front section of the controller opens up kind of like a car bonnet. And then by raising either of these metal levers here, you then get to pull the entire analog stick mechanism away from the controller, just like that. It's a modular approach then, and it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? These sticks are among the most prone parts to wear down on any controller, and with the Edge, Sony at least offers a solution. Except, there's a catch here. It turns out a replacement stick module isn't included for the price, and instead it'll set you back £20 or €20 each, or 40 for a pair. Also, funnily enough, Sony's website limits us to one replacement stick per customer order right now, though this might change once demand drops. So if you're primarily buying this for the luxury of swappable sticks or avoiding stick drift, bear in mind there's an extra cost attached. The second benefit of the Edge, that'll be the trigger adjustments for competitive shooters. Note the two sliders at the back here with 3 notches. Each allows you to set a physical stopping point for the trigger press, which is known as the trigger travel distance. All the adaptive trigger functionality of the DualSense is maintained, crucial for so many first-party Sony titles, but supposing you want a short press for more immediate input in first-person shooters, that lower notch gives you the shortest travel, reducing the milliseconds, in theory, to when your gunshot comes off on screen. In my experience, it's not as tight as it could be, certainly not next to the competition. Even third-party alternatives like the Hex Gaming Rival Pro, with a trigger travel of just 2mm, easily beats the DualSense Edge in its immediacy of response. It feels more like a mouse click there, but then the Rival Pro controller is ideally meant for FPS titles and not driving games where you need a full range of analog trigger motion. For the DualSense Edge, we get flexibility to play a range of games this way. Point number 3 is perhaps the most transformative upgrade, the back paddles. Just like the Xbox Elite controller, the DualSense Edge sports these metallic back buttons, and just like the Xbox equivalent, they're swappable with this magnetic snap that lets you easily trade them in and out. Included in the box are 2 styles of these paddles, a short pair and a long pair, and they both feel great. Positioning wise, they land perfectly on those spare ring fingers, and crucially, they bring all the benefits you'd expect of 2 extra inputs at the back there. For Elden Ring, for example, and well, any Souls-like in fact, it means no more of this awkward claw hand position to press the circle button to run while nudging the analog stick for camera control. No more finger gymnastics. With the DualSense Edge, just assign that circle run button function to the back right paddle instead. And also, for good measure, though your preference may vary on this one, put item use on the left paddle instead of square, and job done. Your right thumb now rarely needs to leave the stick in battle, putting you in fuller control. This ability to remap the paddle buttons is handy, but Sony actually goes a step further. Integrated into the PS5 front end is a full menu just for DualSense Edge owners. And here, we're able to remap just about anything, whether it be the face buttons, D-pad, touchpad inputs. It's possible to totally reinvent the layout of any game. We're given full control of stick calibration as well via a stick menu. Sony offers up different velocity curves and even tweakable trigger dead zones per stick. And I've got to say, having it all integrated into the PS5 menus right from the start gives the DualSense Edge a huge advantage over third-party options. And again, it's all fully remappable. Just pressing the 2 function buttons at the front of the Edge lets you quick access 3 profiles and 1 default profile. Oddly, there are actually 2 function buttons at the front, left and right, to access this extra menu, but really, one would have done. Both buttons do exactly the same thing, so I think it's maybe a missed opportunity to add more profiles with a combination of buttons there. For all its huge customization benefits, the DualSense Edge has one clear drawback: the fact we only get 2 of these back paddles to work with. Now, the Xbox Elite controller and even third-party efforts like the Scuf controller, for comparison, offer 4 back inputs, and 4 makes sense. Especially in first-person titles like Call of Duty, 4 back paddles lets you remap all the face buttons for jumping, reloading, weapon switching, and crouching. In competitive play, it means your right thumb need never leave the thumbstick. And yes, unfortunately for the Edge, you do therefore have to pick your 2 most commonly used actions. So personally, I went for jump on this one and reload on that one, but your mileage may vary. And for all the advantages I've mentioned in Elden Ring, it's clear 4 buttons here would be even better. Again, the back paddles feel like the DualSense Edge's biggest, most transformative advantage given the PS5 OS support, but it's also a disappointment seeing it cut short to just 2 inputs. Last up then, a note on battery life. This is another one for the negatives column, sadly, because no doubt Sony's added a lot of great new features to the DualSense Edge, but boosting the battery life wasn't on the wish list, it seems. For context, Sony rates a regular DualSense at 12 to 15 hours of use, depending on which features are being used. And well, to be honest, after the last couple of years using it daily, I'd argue it's much lower than that. It feels like I'm constantly reaching for the USB cable, even if I'm just watching a film. Now, the new DualSense Edge, this £210 model, clearly doesn't aim to fix the issue. And in fact, Sony states the Edge's battery life has a marginally shorter life overall. A teardown online, with credit to Twitter user Bud's Controllers here, confirms exactly why this is too. Internally, the DualSense Edge is using a smaller 1050 mAh battery compared to the 1560 mAh unit of the original. So no wonder it's frustrating. The Edge model has incredible flexibility, but the outlook is it doesn't address a big criticism of the standard controller, and honestly that bears out from my time with it so far, which is a shame. Overall, the DualSense Edge has features beyond compare in the PS5 controller space. Firstly, there's the official OS level support, allowing for complete button remapping and minute control over every stick and input. Secondly, there's the fact both analog stick modules on the Edge are replaceable with new official units, albeit at an extra cost. Also huge pluses are the customizable paddles, analog tops, the adjustable trigger travel, and a lovely hard case as well. It's a great package. At £210 or $200, it's a serious upgrade for the enthusiast. Now, that said, it's hard to ignore the downsides as well. Microsoft's equivalent Elite controller goes for a much lower £140 price tag right now to start, and while the Elite doesn't have replaceable stick modules, it does match almost every other bullet point of the Edge. The replaceable stick tops, paddles, full OS level button customization, trigger stops, it's all there. Not to mention you get 4 back paddles on the Elite controller too, so Sony's effort with the Edge is strong, no question. But Microsoft has fine-tuned and perfected its own premium pad years ahead of it, making it pretty hard to beat. As a way of tying this review together then, I actually asked Digital Foundry's Will Judd if he could send over similar competitive options to the Edge, just on PS5. Price-wise, spec-wise, that sort of thing, and this is what he sent over. Now, some of you may have already spotted a few earlier on in the shots, but first is the Scuf Reflex Pro, costing £220 for the PS5 model. In this case, we have the Xbox Instinct model, though the PS5 version works in a similar way. Feature-wise, you get rubberized grips, 4 back buttons with custom profiles, and for £250, a bit extra, there's a more expensive Reflex FPS model as well, which removes adaptive trigger support and replaces both triggers with instant shorter press inputs. So that higher end model is ideal for shooters, but for all-round compatibility, the Scuf Pro model has more flexibility for other types of games. And I've got to say it does feel really good in the hand and a nice design as well. Next up is this offering from Megamods. This eye-catching design would cost you around $170, but you're able to customize it however you like. And Megamods, to be fair, really do live up to their name. It's an official DualSense controller at its core, almost down to the millimeter, except with every modification possible under the sun, at a price. The travel mechanism of the shoulder buttons is customizable, and likewise adding mechanical face buttons, mods for rapid fire, and up to 2 back paddles as well. I'm only scratching the surface, and it's all laid out pretty well on their website. Again, there's no switch for trigger travel on PS5 in this case. It's still very expensive as well, and hard to feature match the DualSense Edge for the price. Last up, you might have seen it already, the Hex Gaming Rival Pro in its full 420 glory. Just imagine you too could have this beautiful thing in your home for just $200. Okay, your mileage may vary on the design, but feature-wise, this is actually pretty cool. Again, it apes the regular DualSense in its ergonomics. It's also a directly competitive price to the DualSense Edge at $200, and for the cost, you get multiple changeable thumbstick tops in the package, like so. You get 4 back buttons, so an advantage there, all remappable via the controller itself. There's also a lower 2mm travel distance for triggers on this Rival Pro versus the 7 on the standard DualSense. Though, again, the travel is fixed in place, and so there's no way to adjust it as with the official controller. At least looking at some of the third-party competition, the DualSense Edge really does hold up in features for its price. Most of the alternatives do have a unique plus point here and there, like the shorter trigger travel, more back buttons, but the cost ramps up accordingly. And it seems getting adjustable triggers into the bargain is a big ask on PS5 third-party solutions too. But that's about it for this comparison. If you did enjoy this hardware breakdown or want to see more, let me know by liking and subscribing. It's also worth hitting that notification bell too, and getting in touch via Twitter if you have any more questions. But from me for now, thanks for watching.